Young, beautiful woman gets given the terrible news she has inoperable brain cancer and only 4 months to live. The courageous Belle Gibson tries chemotherapy and radiotherapy, but no luck, so turns to alternative medicine to battle the disease. Thankfully, it seems to work, as she tells the world through social media. It's a truly inspiring story. Hundreds of thousands of sympathetic followers and fellow sufferers live every step of her journey and celebrate her success as she becomes the poster girl for the alternative wellness industry. There's an award-winning app and a cookbook. Belle Gibson has made it. Except it's all a lie, a great big lie. She doesn't have cancer, never did. Until this day, Belle claims unscrupulous natural therapists duped her into believing she was dying. But tonight, we have the proof that this is a lie too. Belle Gibson is not a victim. She is a fraud. Belle, are you prepared to tell the truth today? The whole truth? No little
absolutely.
half truths, no gobbledygook. The truth.
No, I've been really transparent.
For all her sweetness and light, Belle Gibson is not as she appears.
I guess you could say...
She's here to explain her complicated past, but one problem remains.
I've tried.
Every time she speaks, there's every chance she's lying.
Well, to me...
So just for clarification, are you prepared to sign a statutory declaration to say that everything you tell me today is the truth?
Absolutely. There's nothing left to lose, and if that requires a stat deck, then I'm comfortable with that.
I guess why a stat deck is required is because you don't have a good record on telling the truth, do you? But as you'll see tonight, not even this was the truth. Belle Gibson was a strikingly sympathetic and inspirational figure to her legion of followers when she started posting her story on Instagram in 2013. She said she was a sick young mum who found her salvation in wholesome foods and natural therapies when conventional medicine failed her.
Hi, how are you? Good, how are you?
A woman who defied the doctors who told her in 2009 she had an inoperable malignant brain tumour and just 4 months to live. 4 years on, her followers lived every health high and low with her, and fellow cancer sufferers had new reason to hope.
Thank you.
No, that's fine.
I have been healing a severe and malignant brain cancer for the past few years with natural medicine, Gibson therapy and foods. It is working for me.
Do you accept the level of damage you've done to people's trust?
I do. And they are feeling disrespected. They are feeling hurt. They are feeling betrayed.
And your whole trade was on these poor people. That you inspired them, that they felt sorry for you, that you showed them a path. I mean, you profited from that. You gained from that in reputation and in income.
I didn't trade in my story or in other people's lives.
You did trade in your story. Belle, it's all here.
It is
It is all here. You know, you go on Instagram in 2013. I have been healing a severe and malignant brain cancer for the past few years with natural medicine, Gibson therapy and foods. It's working for me.
It is. And
Except you didn't have brain cancer.
No, I didn't.
No.
But when I was writing that, I thought that I did, and I was feeling well.
Yes, but even then you misrepresented what you thought was your truth, which was all a big lie anyway.
I'm really sorry. And it hurts me, and I beat myself up every day for how I have hurt those who mean a lot to me.
For all her apologies, when you start to unpick Belle's story, you uncover a lifetime of deception and invention. The whole hoax started with the whole pantry, a wellness movement Belle adopted and promoted with the release of her world-first healthy lifestyle app and companion cookbook. From the first page, you're touched by Belle's struggle for survival.
I had a stroke at work. I will never forget sitting alone in the doctor's office 3 weeks later, waiting for my test results. He called me in and said, "You have malignant brain cancer, Belle. You're dying. You have 6 weeks, 4 months tops." I remember a suffocating, choking feeling, and then not much else.
But there was no real doctor, no doctor's office, and no conventional test results, as most people would expect and demand. It's highly questionable, but this is Belle's revised story now. She says in 2009 she met a man called Mark Johns, who told her he was an immunologist and neurologist, though no record of him exists.
He had come to my home and went through a series of tests, and this was dubbed integrative medicine.
So he comes to your home and he does some tests on you?
He does.
What sort of tests?
It was a box, a machine with lights on the front, and that machine was apparently German technology. There's two metal pads, one that goes below the chair and one that goes behind your back, and then that measures what I believe or remember to be frequencies.
And what were the results?
He said to me that I had a stage 4 brain tumour and that I had approximately 4 months to live.
Why did you write in the foreword of your book that you got this information in your doctor's office, that you got this prognosis in your doctor's office?
Because I think that being open and telling people the way that it happened would not be understood, and that people would be disappointed or angry for me, not following what is the right way to go about this.
So you lied because you feared you wouldn't be believed. Is that what you're saying?
It's not what I'm saying.
Well, can you be clearer on what you're saying? I mean, you were absolutely misleading, weren't you? You said a doctor gave you this terrible prognosis in his office. Now, you've just admitted that you didn't say it was at your home and it wasn't with a real doctor because you thought people would be disappointed in you.
No, I believed he was a real doctor.
So did you lie to be believed, is the question.
I didn't see him in his doctor's office in Perth.
You didn't see him in his doctor's office ever because he doesn't have an office, does he?
No.
Right. You claimed also in your book that you underwent chemotherapy and radiotherapy for 2 months. True or false?
At the time...
True or false?
True, because at the time I believed I was having radiotherapy.
So, false.
I believed that I was having radiotherapy. When he gave me medication, I was told that it was oral chemotherapy, and I believed it.
It turns out now, if you believe Belle, that Mark Johns' treatments were alternative. But in her book, she describes them as conventional.
I pulled myself out of chemo and radiotherapy.
And takes pride in dumping them because of the side effects.
My doctors freaked out.
To heal herself, she embraces alternative therapies, and eventually a new career and a new age celebrity is born.
I was empowering myself to save my own life through nutrition, patience, determination, and love.
But today she has yet another reason for why she walked away from cancer medication.
Very soon after I'd started this treatment here in Melbourne, I fell pregnant, and that was a huge catalyst for me.
In what way?
Because I thought, well, if I'm undergoing chemotherapy, then I don't want that to affect my pregnancy.
Oh, so you stopped the chemotherapy because you were pregnant?
I stopped the chemotherapy for various reasons. I didn't know.
Truth, Belle, truth.
Tara, I'm trying to draw on information.
No, don't draw on information. Just be honest.
I am being
Please
honest
be
with you.
I'm trying to be open to what you're saying, but you were just muddying the waters with every answer. You set up a guy who's some quack, you're now saying, as a conventional doctor, giving you conventional treatment that is not helping your brain tumours, so you leave it. That's what you set up in your book, right? You didn't write it as you've just told it to me. You didn't write it who this man was. You didn't write that he came to you in your home. You didn't write that the chemotherapy and radiotherapy you claim to have is not what most people would have. You didn't write it like that. You rewrote history.
I wrote 5 introductions to my book.
Okay, whose fault is it now?
It's nobody's fault.
Right.
But that is a very brief version of my story and my life.
I mean, in 2009 was a really bad year for you, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You had 3 heart operations. You suffered 2 cardiac arrests. You died twice on the operating table. You had a stroke. And you were diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumour and given 4 months to live.
Correct. And
all that happened.
I still have the heart condition, and I was supposed to have surgery for that.
You were supposed to have surgery.
And I didn't.
And why did you tell people that you had 3 surgeries?
At the time, I think going back, I was late teens, and I was going through a lot of emotional trauma and a lot of abuse at the time.
What sort of abuse?
Someone who was really prominent during my childhood was stalking me.
At the time, Belle was living in Perth and was a frequent contributor to an online skateboarding forum. But instead of chatting about skateboarding, Belle was telling her friends an elaborate fairy tale, supposedly from her hospital bed, in not 1, but 3 admissions for life-saving heart surgery. Were you in hospital at the time that you were posting these?
No.
I mean, you go into extraordinary details. I had surgery about 7 hours ago. The doctor comes in and tells me the draining failed and I went into cardiac arrest and died for just under 3 minutes. I had the most intense bruising from the paddles when they electrocuted me back to consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Minus the wires and constant throwing up of blood. Anyway, the procedure failed and I died.
See, I haven't read back through all of that. But I also think when you're young and have gone through the situation I had just gone through, you are melodramatic. I don't have...
Melodramatic now? I mean, they're straight out lies. You weren't in hospital. You're claiming you were. You claimed you died twice. You didn't. You claimed you had 2 cardiac arrests. You didn't. That's not melodramatic. That's straight out lying.
It is.
Extraordinary lies. And if you lie about that, and you go to those extraordinary lengths to create the story around that lie, how can we believe anything you say now?
Tara, I have lost everything and I'm not here to regain it. But when you hit rock bottom, there is only an opportunity to be honest and to heal and to apologise. And I'm here to do that. There is no reason for me to lie. And it's not something I want to be doing either.
You can only wonder if Belle was seduced by the sympathy her heart surgery deception won her. But whatever the reason, her next claim of terminal brain cancer came a month later in 2009. While today Belle accepts she doesn't have a brain tumour, she maintains that up until earlier this year, she thought she did, because her so-called doctor, Mark Johns, tricked her into believing so. Why he would, or if he even exists, are still mysteries.
I know the question is, why did I not initially go and get a brain scan?
Exactly. But curiously, at this point in the interview, Belle makes a stunning admission. She says as far back as 2010, she was having her own doubts about her tumour.
So I didn't know whether I was getting worse. I didn't know if I was getting better. I didn't know if it was the same. I thought that it was important to go and seek a scan and be confident in where I stood.
I don't mean to be crass about it, but it was also the fact that despite being given a 4-month deadline, you're still alive.
Yeah.
Was that an indicator to you that you didn't have brain cancer?
It wasn't an indicator. I went to the Alfred Hospital and I contacted Mark and I had said to him, I'm not sure where things are at, so I want to go and get a brain scan. He had me sign paperwork which enlisted him as my medical professional, where the scan from the Alfred would be then passed on to him so we could also consult on it.
Right. So what did the brain scan show?
He brought in scans and it showed a brain tumour. But that wasn't my scan, because most recently I went back to the Alfred and I got my full portfolio from them. And I did get that brain scan, but there is no brain tumour there.
Okay, so what date was that, Belle? When did you go to the Alfred?
I will be able to give you this information.
Well, we've already asked for background information. We've asked for all your medical records and your medical history. You haven't given us any dates. You haven't given us any brain scans. You haven't given us any MRIs. You haven't given us any tissue tests. You haven't given us anything.
I wasn't explicitly asked for any of that, but I have it.
Well, really?
Of course I do. The producers I've been working with are aware of my health position. I wasn't...
Belle, please. I mean, either you're interested in getting to the bottom of this and presenting the facts as they are, the facts, or you're not, okay?
It was in 2010 that I went to the Alfred initially.
Mm-hmm. Do you know who you saw then?
No, I don't, but again, I have that information.
After our interview, Belle finally did hand over a few medical records, but you have to wonder why, because this one is damning. It shows, yes, she did visit the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne, and yes, she did have a brain scan, but she didn't go because she thought she had brain cancer, and curiously, she didn't even mention she had brain cancer. She went because she was now convinced she had multiple sclerosis. The scan revealed she didn't have MS, but most importantly, it also showed there was no sign of a brain tumour. It was actually 2011, and a neurologist in a 40-minute face-to-face consultation tells Belle her brain scans are normal. We've also checked with medical professionals who say even if Belle was complaining about MS symptoms only, the MRI would have revealed any tumours in her brain. That 40-minute consultation with the neurologist proves that even if Belle thought at one time she had a brain tumour, she definitely knew in 2011 that she didn't. That's 2 years before she sold her sob story to the world, before she went on Instagram, before she developed the whole pantry app, and before she wrote the book claiming she was healing herself naturally from a malignant tumour. Belle Gibson was never a cancer survivor. What she is a fraud. And do you believe you have a mental illness?
No.
It's been suggested perhaps you have Munchausen syndrome or a factitious disorder. Do you accept that perhaps you do?
I don't accept that because I don't feel that I do. And with Munchausen's, it's a disorder where you create these syndromes and you believe it and you cause physical pain for that to be believed. And I'm not doing that, and I didn't do that.
Belle's profile and business flourished from 2013, all on the back of her terrible lies.
Belle Gibson is a mother, a businesswoman, and she's also living with brain cancer.
She knew she wasn't sick.
For a person living with brain cancer, you look incredibly healthy.
So what did she do next?
The whole pantry was born through Belle's own battle with brain cancer.
In 2014, she sought out another quack, and guess what? He told her the cancer she knew she didn't have had spread.
It was 5 years ago I was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Belle couldn't wait to share the awful news with her followers.
With frustration and ache in my heart, it hurts me to find space tonight to let you all know, with love and strength, that I've been diagnosed with a 3rd and 4th cancer.
Belle says her new health guru told her the cancer was now in her blood, spleen, brain, uterus and liver. Unlike Mark Johns, this man does exist, but when we spoke to him, he denied giving Belle such devastating news because he's not qualified to diagnose cancer. He's saying he never ever told you that you had cancer throughout your body.
Mm-hmm.
Did he ever say that to you?
He did.
So he's lying, you're not lying.
I am not lying. He definitely told me that my brain tumour is still present and that I have new and secondary cancers.
And how did he assess that?
In the same way that Mark did. Similar machines and similar equipment.
Did you think to go to a doctor? Did you think to go to the hospital? Did you think to get this checked out?
Not really, not initially. I was devastated.
Just sounds like you chose to believe that you had cancer.
Nobody wants to live with the fear of a terminal illness or dying.
No, and nobody knows that better than people who actually live with that. And you didn't live with that. That's not what you had.
No, it's not, but I lived for years with the fear that I was dying. And that is horrible. And I'm still coming to terms with that I can take that off my shoulders now.
Did you live in fear of being found out?
No, because I wasn't living in a space where I didn't know that this wasn't my reality.
Would you accept that you're a pathological liar?
No.
What the definition of truth is?
Yes.
What's your definition of truth?
Speaking with honesty and with clear definition around fact.
And what's your definition of a lie?
Well, obviously the opposite of that.
A false statement made with deliberate intent to deceive, an intentional untruth, a falsehood.
And I've not been intentionally untruthful. I've been openly conveying and speaking about what was my reality and what is my reality today.
And will you accept that your reality does not actually match reality?
It doesn't match your normal or your reality, but I also know that I'm not alone.
Belle's normal suggests a difficult childhood. She says she doesn't know her father, she's estranged from her mother and brother, and spent much of her younger years moving frequently. But is that reason enough for a woman who never has a simple answer, even when it comes to her age? You're 23, right? Well, actually, how old are you?
I've always been raised as being currently a 26-year-old.
How old are you?
Well, I live knowing, as I've always known, that I would be 26.
Okay, Belle.
This
This is a really, really simple question. How old are you?
I believe that I'm 26.
And?
I have two birth certificates and I've had my name changed 4 times. The identity crisis there is big, but that was my normal when I was growing up, Tara. That
What do you know the truth to be now?
that's probably a question that we'll have to keep digging for, because it's not something I've ever understood or had answers around.
Right, so when you needed to file some financial documents, how did you choose the birth date you gave, if you don't know?
With my most recent deed poll paper, which has the younger of the age and the most recent of the name.
Right, so currently, then, according to those documents, you're 23.
Correct.
It would be funny if it wasn't so serious, and the really serious side to this is those who were caught out by Belle. The Schwartz family believed and befriended Belle. Sadly, their 7-year-old son Joshua does have terminal brain cancer. What type of an apology would you like to make to the Schwartz family?
Their family means a lot to me because of the care and the love and the friendship that we had grown over the last year.
They believe that you pumped them for information about their son's symptoms so you could take them on as your own.
That family was one that I did have little interaction with.
That's not how they describe it. They say
I
you cried
understand.
they cried with you cried with them, your children played
I
together.
understand that they're hurting, but I also know that I never questioned Joshua or his mother about his symptoms.
Along with the Schwartz family, there have been a number of charities Belle has pledged money to which have not seen a cent, and there are disputed donations of up to $300,000. This was Belle's undoing. She promoted her promise to raise money for various charities, but when the funds failed to materialise, her deception was exposed. In March this year, the act was up, and she's been trying to lie her way out of it ever since. I mean, you praised your community for raising $5,000 for two charities that you nominated. But then when you were pressed on it because that money never showed up, you said, well, in fact, we didn't raise that money, despite praising the community for raising that amount of money. And, you know, a portion of that money gets sent to one charity, but only after you're questioned by the media.
I took my books and my finances and my accounting to business managers and accountants, and I said, I'm way in over my head with this. Can you please help me out and get this up to date? And 8 months on, it's still not finalised.
I don't know that you need to be an expert in accounting to know that you don't make promises that you're not sure you can fill. So
I still stand by those promises.
Well, you can't have it both ways, Belle. You can't say, you know, my community has raised this amount of money. Oh, actually, no, they didn't. What did you do? Misspeak? Or is it the accountant's fault that you made that claim when in fact it's not the truth?
And I'm keeping those promises, Tara.
You didn't fulfil them and you misrepresented yourself yet again.
I am not misrepresenting myself.
For many, she was the wellness warrior. Her good health was the great hope for her followers, especially those battling cancer themselves. What is really worrying is how many of them may have given up conventional treatment to follow Belle's alternative path. Again, Belle tries to dodge her responsibility.
But I was not an expert in anyone else's health. And
Excuse me, but don't be naive now. I mean, you are appealing to an incredibly vulnerable audience, incredibly vulnerable people.
Mm-hmm.
You have a responsibility to make sure your story is right.
I'm not trying to get away with anything. I'm not trying to smooth over anything.
Well,
it's not easy for me to be here. It's not easy for me to relive detail.
how do you think it is for the people who followed you, whose heart went out to you when you wrote about how unwell you were, how well you were, your progress, your decline? These people who cried for you. Have you thought about them? I know you sit here and tell me how you feel. Have you thought about how they're feeling at the moment?
In the same way I just said, I put them in my shoes and I know that they're feeling the same way I feel.
Well, some of them want you to go to jail. That's how they feel.
I know that they feel that way. I've seen the emails. I've seen some of the comments. I'm on the receiving end of all of that, Tara. And I take responsibility for how this has unfolded.
Do you take responsibility for driving any people away from conventional medicine in seeking treatment for their cancer?
That would be really heartbreaking to me because I never intended on doing that.
Do you accept that that's what you might have done?
I accept that might have happened.
While she concedes she might have caused damage to others, extraordinarily, Belle maintains she's the real victim here. The lie continues, to herself and to the rest of us.
But I've been going through this, Tara, since last year. Not since the media broke it, but since months and months before that. So this has been a really private ordeal for me to know where I stand.
Sure, I mean, but shouldn't it have been a public one? I mean, you were happy for the lies to be public. What about the truth?
It was going to be public.
I just wonder, Belle, if, and I don't know if you're at a stage where you'll ever admit it, but Whether you just didn't know what you were getting yourself into. That you probably thought you weren't doing any harm, but that you thought you could get away with it.
There was nothing to get away with, Tara.
Oh, of course there was. There was adulation, there's sympathy, there's a community who loves you. There's huge amounts to get away with.
There's a community that I love.
I'm just wondering if you kind of were playing in a grown-up's world without realising it, that it was all going to end badly.
It didn't need to. Once I started to figure out where I stood and what reality actually was, and I had received the definitive, no, you do not have cancer, then that was something that I had to come to terms with. That takes a lot. And it was really traumatizing. I was feeling a huge amount of grief. And
grief for not having cancer?
No, that I had been lied to, and that I felt like I had been taken for a ride. It took me a lot to unpack that. And once I was strong enough, I was ready to come out and speak with my community about it, and I had a definitive date. And that date was only 10 days before the media broke it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
An app and a website in which she claimed that healthy eating had cured her condition.
It was 5 years ago I was diagnosed with terminal cancer. It's been hard.
Belle Gibson was the queen bee of wellness. People worshipped her.
I was deeply invested in what she was saying because it was just such an amazing story.
This is the story of the rise and fall of one of Instagram's first super influencers, told by those she influenced.
Maybe she's got the right idea, maybe I'm doing it all wrong. I'm dying and she's out there living her best life.
And those who sought the truth.
I just was immediately suspicious about her claim about this brain tumour. You just don't live with something like that for 5 years without having some kind of treatment.
I am not lying. He definitely told me that my brain tumour is still present and that I have new and secondary cancers.
In 2013, the world first met wellness influencer Belle Gibson, who attracted a huge global online following with her brave story.
A young, beautiful woman gets given the terrible news she has inoperable brain cancer and only 4 months to live. The courageous Belle Gibson tries chemotherapy, but no luck, so turns to alternative medicine to battle the disease.
Belle shared her incredible story of living for years with terminal cancer on Instagram. Her adoring audience was inspired by her every post.
It looked like even if you weren't going through cancer treatment, that you would still want to live that lifestyle. Everything was bright and glossy, an amazing style about her that was very engaging, very appealing. It just all looked great.
I was in complete awe of this woman. She was incredibly open and honest. She was unafraid to be vulnerable and be very explicit about her experience. She had this incredible story that was something that I could perhaps relate to in a way with my own health issues. She took her own well-being into her hands and it worked, and she transformed her life from it.
When Maxine Ali began secondary school, she was diagnosed with the chronic illness ulcerative colitis.
I got so unwell that eventually I wasn't able to go to school anymore. I wasn't able to participate in the normal things that most 12-year-olds are doing at that time. Immediately after I was diagnosed, I was put on a whole bunch of medication, including steroids. I kind of experienced some of the physical side effects that come from steroids, such as weight gain, bloating of the face. And when I was eventually well enough to go back to school, my physical appearance had changed quite considerably. all of my friends no longer wanted to be seen with me or associated with me because I was the weird one that stuck out. The way I was being treated while I was on medication was so unbearable for me that I decided to stop using conventional medicine and try and find a natural way to heal myself. Seeing someone like Belle heal themselves through food made me feel hopeful. It made me feel like this was the answer to everything that I had been looking for.
The foundations of Belle's radical approach, healing illness through diet, were laid over 50 years ago.
There's a word you don't hear every day. It means exactly what you might think it means. The opposite of illness. It's a movement that is catching on all over the country among doctors, nurses, and others concerned with medical care. Wellness is really the ultimate in something called self-care, in which patients are taught to diagnose common illnesses and, where possible, to treat themselves.
Wellness was born in 1960s California, where a generation of young Americans experimented with Eastern mysticism, mind-expanding drugs, and back-to-nature living.
In wellness, you are the leader, you're your own guru, and you're the perfect person that is trying to make your life better and more full.
Before long, wellness shed its alternative roots, growing with exercise fads, spa tourism, and diet crazes. Wellness had reached the mainstream.
Alongside attempts to encourage all of us to look after our health a little better is a booming wellness industry, claimed to be worth $4.2 trillion a year.
Wellness found a home on social media, encouraged by celebrities who posted their aspirational lifestyles full of wellness practices.
What if I told you the best place to begin is within?
It was at this point that Belle started posting about her wellness journey.
I get out of bed for what we do. We really believe that we're changing people's lives. We just want to go, hey, maybe eat some more fruits and vegetables, move your body a little more, drink a little bit more water.
Inspired by Belle, Pixie Turner took to Instagram to spread the wellness message.
Everyone was using overhead shots, so I did the same. And the more I did that, the more it paid off. And then I'd spend the next hour just refreshing Instagram, watching the likes come in. I loved getting all those likes. The first time I got over 1,000 likes on a picture, I was so happy.
Pixie's wellness journey began when she was advised to see a cardiologist, following a health scare in the family.
When I was 19 years old, I was told that my cholesterol was too high. I should follow some lifestyle changes if I wanted to and come back in a year. If it was still high, I would have to go on statins for the rest of my life. I did not want to do that. I went and did the most obvious thing to me at the time. I went straight to Dr. Google, started typing. I found Belle Gibson and this wellness community that was very focused on taking charge of your own health. It was very empowering. And on top of that, it was very visually appealing. And in between that, there were these pictures of these people who looked so healthy and happy and shiny. And if I need to eat that food to look like that, I'm gonna do it.
Like hundreds of thousands of others, Pixie and Maxine started using the first wellness app in the world, The Whole Pantry, designed by Belle Gibson.
It was offering this kind of toolkit for people to follow her lifestyle. So there were these really, really stunning recipes. There was something very serene about the app.
I hadn't seen anyone do anything like that. And to me, I saw that as just a continuation of her wanting to share something with the world that was valuable and that people wanted. I saw it as very selfless for her to share all of this with people. I thought she must be a really kind person.
Belle Gibson is a mother, a businesswoman, and she's also living with brain cancer. I mean, why this app?
When Belle went on Breakfast TV to promote the app, she was admired by the hosts.
Yeah, and you're quite inspirational. I wouldn't mind betting that that's a fair bit behind all of this as well. For a person living...
They were visibly moved by her seemingly inspiring story.
We really believe that we've revolutionised something that people are becoming increasingly interested and invested in, which is health and wellness.
For a person living with brain cancer, might I add, you look incredibly healthy.
Having funded the award-winning app herself, now Apple invited Belle to California. They wanted to adapt the whole pantry for their soon-to-be launched Apple Watch.
It was 5 years ago I was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and we launched the whole pantry a year ago. That evolution came through my community. They kept reaching out to me saying, how are we going to, live the whole life without resources or without something pulling that all together. So that was my responsibility.
The whole pantry was about more than just healthy living. It was also about giving back. A portion of each app sale was donated to charitable causes Belle was passionate about.
We really believe that we're changing people's lives, and we have a giving back end of the company as well, with your app download transfers into community donation. So that's everything for funding medical support for children that are living with cancer to building schools in Sierra Leone.
It just reinforced what I already knew about her, which is that she is selfless. She's not doing this for her own personal gain. She's trying to help people. And this was just another way of her doing that.
In Belle's hometown of Melbourne, mum of 3, Kylie Willie, had a successful personal training business.
I was getting ready for my best friend's wedding. I was maid of honour, so there was lots of excitement around that. I had some chest pain, which was unusual. My husband and friend talked me into going to the doctor to have it investigated. So I went down to the local centre and I had a scan, and the first one was just an ultrasound of my armpits, and I had MRIs and CT scans. I was driving to the rehearsal dinner and the doctor called me and she said, I need you to come into the clinic and see me. I said, well, it's just not possible. I'll have to see you on Monday. I can't come in. And she said, well, I hate to do this over the phone, but you have lymphoma. You have cancer. We got through the wedding, and the whole time I just remember being in this surreal, like, holy shit, like, how is this, like, my life right now? Like, what's going to happen? And that night on the Sunday, the lymph nodes had enlarged so much I was having trouble breathing because they were pushing up pressure on my neck. I couldn't lift my arms up, and so I was taken by ambulance to the Alfred Hospital where I started treatment. I guess the reality really set in about the severity of the diagnosis is when the doctor said to me, you need to get your affairs in order. And I remember looking at him thinking, you have to be kidding. I was diagnosed like 5 seconds ago. How am I down for the count already? Like, give me a chance to fight it first.
After 6 months of treatment in hospital, Kylie's health wasn't improving.
I was having daily chemo. I had no hair and I'd had 17 lumbar punctures. I was like, you're not making me better, you're making me worse. You're killing me. Like, why am I even doing this? My beautiful girlfriend Susie came to visit me and she said to me, have you heard about this girl, Belle Gibson? She's got brain cancer and, she's doing really well. Okay, this is interesting. Maybe she's got the right idea. Maybe I'm doing it all wrong. I'm dying on the inside, getting worse with every single treatment. I look horrendous and she's out there living her best life.
Interested in finding out more about her lifestyle, Kylie bought Belle's newly released wellness book.
So in the front page of the book, Belle writes about her own story. I pulled myself out of chemo and radiotherapy. My doctors freaked out, but they couldn't stop me. I was empowering myself to save my own life through nutrition, patience, determination, and love. I wanted to be just like Belle, beautiful, and she was successful. She was inspiring to so many people. She was what the ultimate goal was, to be like Belle Gibson.
Now, we've forgiven the avocado for its high fat content and deemed it a superfood. But can the food we eat really clean our bodies and make us feel well?
With her book and app, Belle advocated clean eating to help heal the body, which meant restricting your diet.
Clean eating was a phrase that the wellness community really latched onto and really used a lot. The idea that we needed to clean up the way that we were eating. I mean, everyone knows vegetables are good for you. Fruit is good for you. Plants are good for you. It made sense, the idea that all these processed foods and these various ingredients that we were eating were not good for us. It was so simple and it made so much sense.
In pursuit of clean eating, Pixie's diet became more and more restricted.
So in my fridge now, I've got various animal products, things that I definitely would not have eaten anything with any kind of meat in it. Definitely not. We've got pasta, that's got gluten. Hell no, that's not allowed. No way. Anything with dairy, so, you know, whether that's cream, it's cheese, cream cheese, hard cheese, soft cheese. None of this is okay. All of this is gone. I mean, it seems harmless, but because it's prepared and it's in a package, I would not have eaten this. Also, this one has cream in it, so definitely big no-no.
And on paper, someone might say, you know, that seems really healthy. Like, that to me is the epitome of like a healthy thing.
It's got more than 5 ingredients. That means it's processed and you're not allowed it.
And what's the idea behind that?
Someone on the internet made it up and it became a thing. Because the idea is if it has 5 or more ingredients, it's probably a processed food and therefore it's a bad food because it's processed. And finally, we have wine. Alcohol wasn't really a thing on wellness because it's completely devoid of nutrients. And also, when you drink wine or you drink alcohol, it doesn't allow you to wake up feeling fresh the next morning, ready to have your, your spin class and your smoothie for breakfast. I mean, I was at the end of my first year of uni when I got into wellness. So whilst a lot of my friends and colleagues were going out and drinking, I was only very occasionally going along with them, and I wouldn't drink that much. Usually something really simple, not wine.
After 9 months of chemotherapy, Kylie was struggling to cope with treatment for her lymphoma.
I'd had enough of all of the poking and the prodding and the constant scans. I wasn't getting any better, I was getting worse. I was done, and I can remember my husband, waking me up to take me to the Alfred, and he would get up before me, and he would put my pillow in the car, my blanket, then he would wake me last minute and take me. And I sat at the door at the house. I'm just like, I'm done. I'm not doing it. I'm not going anymore. I do not want another lumbar puncture. I don't want it. We need to talk about other treatments. I can't do this anymore. The chemo wasn't for me. It wasn't working for me, that I should come off it and try, the clean eating. I was desperate. My life had totally changed. And she appeared to be doing everything right, and I felt like I was doing everything wrong. I felt like I was sucked into this process that wasn't working for me. So I felt like, no, I need to give this a go to see if this works. She was saying that what she was doing was curing her cancer. It was making it better. And I had her there to look at. I had her on my phone, and she was in the magazines, and she was on the news, and she was being reported. So I trusted her. I trusted everybody that supported her.
Wanting to follow Belle's eating regime, Kylie began messaging her directly on Instagram.
When I sent her a message, it was after she'd had another procedure, and I remember just, sending her good wishes and, I hope you're going to be okay, and my thoughts and hopes are with you, sending all, positive vibes. And she replied, thanking me for my kind wishes. I was telling people, I spoke to Belle Gibson. She replied to my message like, And I did all that. I felt like we were probably opening, the lines of communication and probably would chat more about, her journey and my journey. And yeah, I was pretty chuffed at the fact that she replied to my message. I wanted to be a friend.
In July 2014, Belle posted this picture on Instagram with a caption explaining how her cancer had spread and it wasn't a good prognosis.
With frustration and ache in my heart, my beautiful game-changing community,
It hurts me to find space tonight to let you all know, with love and strength, that I've been diagnosed with a third and fourth cancer.
I have cancer in my blood, spleen, brain, uterus and liver. I am hurting.
I can still see it so clearly in my mind, that post and that caption, because I just remember feeling so devastated for her. Like, how can this happen to somebody who's worked so hard, who's achieved all of this, who's such a great person? It just seemed really unfair.
If brain cancer wasn't bad enough and now she's copping this, and this poor beautiful woman that, was just trying to live her best life, and I felt so sad for her.
Belle's devoted followers poured out their love and support for her on social media. But her claims were so extraordinary that some had started to doubt her story.
Around 2005, my wife Susan was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I recall very vividly the feeling of powerlessness that we both had. And you want to have some sense of control over this illness and not it just being in the hands of a doctor. And how desperate you can feel, so desperate that you'll go down the Google rabbit hole and look into all sorts of alternative practices. And you get into this bewildering kind of situation of who do I trust?
What's the first thing that comes into your mind when you hear the name Belle Gibson?
The first thing that comes into my mind is my meeting with Belle Gibson in February 2015 when I sat down to interview her in a cafe. I had been writing about the wellness phenomenon since 2012, and then I came across Belle Gibson's claims online, and I was just immediately intrigued by them. Because I'd written about the wellness industry and had interviewed a range of cancer specialists, I just was immediately suspicious about her claim about this brain tumour. You just don't live with something like that for 5 years without having some kind of treatment. As far as I could tell, in the mainstream media, no one had really thought to raise any questions about this narrative that she had put forward. I said to my editor, look, there's something that just doesn't add up. I mean, she's claiming that she's got this malignant brain tumour and 4 other cancers, and she looks like $1 million. I think we just dig into this a bit. One of the first things I noticed when I began delving into Belle's story was that on social media, she'd had enormous attention for the past 18 months, but prior to that, it was almost as if she didn't exist. It appeared that she had erased parts of her online history prior to 2014. That just really intrigued me because the obvious question is, why would you do that? And so I began doing intensive searches of Google to try and find any trace of her before 2014. And that's when I came across this skateboard chat forum from 2009 where there was this young woman called Belle Gibson who was nothing like the Belle Gibson of the whole pantry. She was this 17-year-old trash-talking skater girl. And to be honest, initially I thought, well, this can't possibly be Belle Gibson. You know, there must be just 2 Belle Gibsons because apart from anything else, Belle Gibson was supposedly 20 years old in 2009, not 17. I came across this post where she talked about how she'd had this tattoo done, and I suddenly realised, like, this is her, because the tattoo she described is the tattoo that Belle Gibson has on her arm.
Not only had Belle been lying about her age, as Richard continued to research her past, he found further worrying inconsistencies.
In the course of burrowing into this skateboarding chat forum, I came across these posts where she claimed to be writing from a hospital bed in Hollywood Private Hospital in Perth and to be recovering from open heart surgery. And she was claiming that she died on the operating table and been resuscitated. I mean, it was supposedly written in real time while she was in hospital. She was describing the chapel that she went to pray in. And as with her whole pantry Facebook page, the reaction from all these people on the skate forum was one of, extraordinary drama and, my God, Belle, are you okay? And, that's terrible. And, should I send you some flowers? It was kind of a mirror image of what was on the whole pantry page, but it was 5 years earlier and a younger incarnation of her making these extraordinary and frankly highly unlikely claims about a medical emergency. The other thing was there was no mention on this skateboarding forum about this malignant brain tumour that she supposedly had.
Richard wasn't the only person sceptical about Belle's story. Online, others were raising doubts too. Penguin, the publishers of Belle's book, had also started to notice discrepancies in her story.
Marie Claire said today, you really have changed the whole market for food apps. Because now it's like a trend. Everyone wants to do one. I'm like, I know.
To prepare Belle for journalists and their probing questions, they gave her media coaching.
What we suspect might happen now is that because you are the success story of the moment, you know what journalists do? They want to start scratching away.
Well, they already are.
Yeah, exactly. And we're concerned about that.
Well, that's what the publicist at Apple also said. It's like, what story do you want to be?
So I'm going to ask you some of these questions, and some of them you won't like, but that's okay because it's just us.
Yeah.
You've said that the cancer is now in your blood and your spleen and your brain and your uterus and your liver. That's really, it's serious now, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to get tested for ovarian cancer. I no longer have cancer in my uterus. Woohoo! Really amazing. Not long ago. Yeah, but it still all feels like it sucks down there.
Do you think you're dying?
Yeah.
You feel like you're dying?
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. And it's conflicting for a lot of people. Like, I don't think I'm going to die tomorrow, but my body is dying. Like, of course it is. But I don't want them to know every nitty-gritty detail.
After a year of following a strict clean eating diet, Maxine wasn't seeing the results promised by wellness.
My health started deteriorating. I was starting to feel a lot more run down. I had lost my period, and physically I just wasn't feeling that good anymore. I would often find myself hungry a lot of the time, creating this sort of binge cycle at night. I'd eat like maybe half a jar of peanut butter or something like that. And then call my mum and be like, I don't know why I can't stop eating. I don't know what's wrong with me. And she'd say, are you thinking maybe it's the diet that you're on? I'd be like, no, the diet's fine. It's me. I did see a doctor, and of course, one of the first things they will say is you need to eat more and exercise less. But of course, that is the opposite of what society always tells you need to do in order to be healthy. So I was like, they're talking nonsense. Of course, I don't need to exercise less and eat more. What I'm doing is perfectly healthy. I'm taking care of my health, so that's definitely not it. And I just ignored their advice. I definitely think there was a frustration that I was doing everything. I was following all the rules. I had the books that all these wellness influencers were selling that would help me transform my life. And my life didn't look like that. It didn't look that glamorous or exciting. I just felt like a complete failure.
In February 2015, Richard flew to Melbourne to meet Belle, who was doing interviews to publicise her new book, The Whole Pantry.
There was a certain sense of anticipation when I sat down opposite her at this cafe of what is she going to say and how much am I going to be able to glean from her. The thing that you first notice about Belle Gibson is that she just doesn't look sick at all, like she's a picture of glowing health. And the second thing you notice about her is she acts much younger than you expect her to act. I kept thinking to myself, this is the woman who's reduced roomfuls of people to tears and has generated this almost messianic following online. And I was sitting there thinking, I just don't find you convincing. I just didn't buy it. As we went on, it became clear that it was very difficult to get any kind of specificity out of her. You know, she would apologise, her memory was affected by her medical condition. The impression I got was that she thinks on her feet and she shifts her position as she goes, and she creates this confusion in your mind as to what it is that she's saying. You're trying to pin her down, but she keeps shifting position. So about halfway through the interview, I framed a question which was something along the lines of, what about these other 4 cancers that you were recently diagnosed with? And she started this answer that just seemed to go around in circles, and she was talking about the difficulties she was having. She was going to tell me something that she hadn't said publicly before. It was very difficult and upsetting for her. And I was just sitting there thinking, where is this going? Like, what is she talking about? And she started telling me that the doctor who diagnosed her with these other 4 cancers the previous year had shot through on her, and she was no longer seeing him. And she now had doubts about his bona fides. And so I said to her, well, what are you telling me? Are you saying that you're now not sure that you've got these other 4 cancers? And she said, no. I was just completely stunned that she would backtrack from this extraordinary claim that she'd made only 7 months earlier. I just walked away from that interview with really my head spinning. I remember calling my editor from the car and saying, I just can't believe this has happened, but Belle Gibson just recanted to me on the record.
Belle had changed her story about having secondary cancers, but before he could safely go to press, Richard had to prove his theory that Belle never had brain cancer.
So I'm at my desk one day at the office. At this point, I've been ringing just about anybody I can who knows Belle Gibson, and my phone rings and it's Belle Gibson on the phone. I knew straight away that she was really unhappy about the fact that I was digging around, as I expected she would be. She, in her circuitous way, started talking about how damaging media stories can be for people, and that people who are vulnerable can even, commit suicide sometimes if stories of a damaging nature are published. I just got off the phone and thought, oh man, she's just sort of suggested that if I publish this story, she's going to top herself.
Other journalists were on Belle's trail too. They found that she dropped out of school aged 15, and 2 years later she settled in Melbourne just before having a son. They also made a shocking discovery about Belle's business.
Doubts were raised when she failed to deliver a promised $300,000 to charity.
The reason that Nick Toscano and I started looking into it was because we were tipped off. We had around half a dozen people in Belle Gibson's inner circle telling us that they didn't believe she was sick, but that's a very difficult story for a journalist to write. We don't have access to people's medical records. So we started probing her other claims, and these centred around her charitable donations.
So you were effectively following the money?
That's right.
The news that Belle hadn't paid the promised share of her profits to charity rocked the online wellness world, attracting loyal defenders and fierce critics. Belle took to the internet to defend her reputation.
I knew we had to publish immediately. We couldn't sit on what we had anymore. And so I went to the news desk and we got legal advice, and we went straight to press that day under the headline, "Mega Blogger Casts Doubt on Cancer Claims."
Belle's story exploded into the public sphere, and as news of her cancer fraud spread fast, it garnered a furious backlash. Overnight, some of her most loyal fans became her biggest critics.
I was at my girlfriend's hair salon, and it flicked up on my social media that Belle Gibson had lied. I just burst out straight away saying, "Oh my God, Belle Gibson is a liar." I don't know, I felt betrayed and a little bit let down by her. And then the absolute mind-blowing, why the hell would you do that? Why would you pretend to have cancer? Like, what the hell? I felt like it made me look like an idiot.
When the story broke, those closest to Belle were reluctant to go on the record, afraid of the backlash for being associated with her. Even Belle's parents didn't publicly support her. Now, one of Belle's friends has agreed to speak out as long as she isn't identified.
It extremely quickly became this very toxic story, and I kind of didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole because of how toxic it appeared from day one.
Belle grew up in Wynnum, a working-class suburb of Brisbane. She claimed to have left home at age 12, spending her teens living with friends.
I remember the first time I ever met Belle, she looked me right in the eye and she really tried to connect with me very deeply. For a 14-year-old girl, you know, that was something that was really lovely, and I definitely enjoyed my time with Belle. The only catch with Belle was that you knew that there was nothing that she could say that you could take at face value. When she came to class in an arm sling, there was no chance it was actually a broken arm. And, you know, the next week told us that she was a test tube baby. We all kind of went, oh yeah, sure, okay, Belle. We kind of all knew from the beginning that Belle liked to lie. I remember a few years ago now opening up Facebook and seeing a video, and I recognized the face. It was Belle talking about some app that she was creating. And instantly, I kind of had alarm bells ringing in the back of my mind. I kind of sat there going, has she done it again, but on a massive scale now?
People's immediate reaction was denial. This can't be real. Surely not. And then as I think it started to sink in, that's when the doubt creeped in and people thought, okay, maybe she actually did lie.
It was 5 years ago I was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
I don't think I'm going to die tomorrow, but my body is dying.
For a person living with brain cancer, might I add, you look incredibly healthy.
I felt incredibly gullible that I had fallen for something that could so easily have been disproven and was disproven. How could I be so stupid?
It's so devastating for the industry. She was such an important figure. It blows all trust out the water with everyone's stories. I felt really disappointed in myself for having been tricked by her. I became a lot more cynical that day.
It was clear that wellness was never going to be the same.
Belle disappeared, purging all traces of herself from social media. A Facebook group called Belle Gibson Uncovered sprang to life, where people shared stories about Belle and examined her every post for inconsistencies.
It was driven by a lot of people whose family had gone through cancer, whether it be directly or indirectly, and people that had lost people because they didn't go through conventional treatment. So they were really angry. They were angry about the influence that she had on people. They blamed her. A lot of people blamed her for things that had gone wrong. There was a lot of pictures from her past that were contradictory to the image that she was selling. You know, it was, you know, images of her drinking or smoking and not living that amazing healthy lifestyle that she promoted. If only we had have done that before we gave her the platform to be the person that she was.
Within 2 weeks of the story breaking, Penguin had withdrawn Belle's book, and Apple had removed any mention of the whole pantry from their website and app store.
Welcome back to the life and lies of Belle Gibson, the woman who pretended to have cancer and to this day still won't tell the truth that she knew she didn't.
3 months after the scandal broke, Belle appeared on the Australian current affairs show 60 Minutes.
You go on Instagram in 2013. I have been healing a severe and malignant brain cancer for the past few years with natural medicine, Gerson therapy and foods. It's working for me.
It is. And if
Except you didn't have brain cancer.
No, I didn't.
She wasn't at all how I expected her to be. She just came across as devoid of emotions, lacking in any empathy or even recognition of the people that she'd hurt.
How can we believe anything you say now?
Tara, I have lost everything.
Would you accept that you're a pathological liar?
No.
I never quite could sort out my feelings about Belle Gibson, because even though what she did was reprehensible and dangerous, she personally, I thought, was a very fragile person whose grip on reality was a bit tenuous. And so I was constantly in this dilemma about whether I felt sympathy for her or I loathed her.
She's definitely not well, because a well person doesn't do what she's done and believe in her own lies. But she's also highly intelligent. She thinks we're all stupid. That's what annoys me about her. She is the type of person that thinks that she's smarter than the rest of us and we're all fools. Maybe we were there for a little bit, and that she can do and say whatever she likes without any consequence.
On the internet, it is so much easier to prioritize anger than it is to prioritize compassion. I see people still with so much hatred and anger in their hearts at her. And I kind of wish that they knew the 14-year-old Belle and understood the full context of this. I hope that Belle took some really hard lessons and can not have to deal with being public enemy number one.
Pixie and Maxine had become friends through wellness, but after years of restrictive dieting, it had taken a toll on their health.
When I look back now on my time in wellness, I had an unhealthy relationship with food. It was obsessive, it was anxiety-inducing, it was classic signs of orthorexia.
Orthorexia is an eating disorder characterized by having an unsafe obsession with healthy food.
When I was in the midst of it, there was so much denial in terms of the idea that this might actually not be helpful. This is actually harming me and wasn't making me feel good. No, I blocked that out. I couldn't possibly face that idea. I would have been like, everything's great, everything's wonderful. There was so much denial, which I guess is quite classic for disordered eating, is that there is that kind of denial that can often be there.
And I think it's almost, disordered eating is so normalised within wellness that, you know, when you are so immersed within that culture, in your view, there's nothing disordered about it. And I just wanted to have a normal uni experience after years and years of being in and out of school and never really having a sense of stability. I just desperately needed something to cling on to for dear life.
Yeah.
And that's what wellness presented itself as.
Yeah, we were vulnerable. Wellness came along and said, hi, we can help. When you look at our story, it very much shows that wellness is seductive, it is intriguing, and the worst part about it is that you are never good enough. You can never reach peak wellness. You can never be good enough for wellness. And that is, to somebody who's going into that already vulnerable and probably with low self-esteem, probably not feeling too great about themselves because of whatever's going on, it just pushes you down further and just makes you feel worthless. And that is shit.
Belle was fined £230,000 for making false claims about her donations to charity. A fine she's never paid.
The people of Australia want to know why you haven't paid that fine.
Today, it's rumoured that she's working in a Melbourne school and that she's converted to Islam. As the dust settles on her story, some wonder how she'd been allowed to achieve such success, and if Belle was the only guilty party.
I don't feel anger towards Belle in the same way that I do towards the industry as a whole. I feel angry at social media for creating this space where misinformation can spread unchecked. I feel angry at the publishers who gave Belle a platform to profit from people's vulnerability.
You didn't even for a second question her because of who supported her, who was backing her. It wasn't just Apple, it was Penguin Books, it was Cosmopolitan that had, endorsed her and stood behind her. So I wouldn't have thought it was ever my responsibility to fact check her.
The biggest publishing company in the world and the biggest computer company in the world had apparently completely failed to do any due diligence on her claims. I mean, Penguin admitted to me that they didn't really do any proper fact-checking on her medical history. And Apple, when I finally got someone to talk to me, effectively said, well, they didn't care about the questions that were being raised about her cancer claim as long as her app worked.